Jolyon Collier is the founder and president of Canton, a nonprofit focused on saving and protecting coral reefs through living underwater art. Jolyon joins me to discuss Canton Coral's plan of action and how he overcame a very difficult past in the United Kingdom to creating a successful life here in America, now culminating in his passion to give back by fighting climate change and saving our oceans. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time coming on. So let's get right into this. What is Canton Coral?
Well, Canton Coral is a non-profit organization, and we design, build, and install very unique contemporary art pieces that function as coral nurseries, and we donate those to people doing really good work in the coral restoration industry in tourist areas. So we don't plop these sculptures in the middle of nowhere. We pop them where people are going to be visiting, and it becomes an attraction which has many different elements to it.
Is it more important to get tourists to come to certain areas, or are you doing it more to save the coral reefs that are being destroyed by civilization? Because it's like a competing interest there, no?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, where corals are being damaged is where tourists are at. There's a huge number of reefs that are dying, and they're right next door to massive dive operations going on all day long. So the concept is, why would we put a sculpture on Marine Park as a coral nursery in the middle of nowhere where no one sees it, when we can have all the added benefits of having a coral sculptural installation that diverts diver traffic off of existing reefs that are extremely fragile? And people don't know about this, but one of the three top killers is tourist traffic. People stand on it, snap it, grab it. It's unbelievable the amount of damage that tourist divers actually inflict on coral reefs. So when we place our sculptures, they're slightly away from coral reefs. So then people come to our site, and it alleviates the pressure off an existing reef, and they get a great experience because they're actually seeing coral grow on this really cool sculptural installation.
Which then I guess attracts all the different fish that they wanted to come see by diving, I guess, right?
Exactly. You'll get the sharks, the turtles, all the fish, yes.
Why is coral so important?
There's so many reasons, right? I mean, so if you're a coastal community in the tropics, they stop storm surges, essentially. So you have a hurricane comes in, big waves, they crash on that reef and don't go onto the islands. And you can see this in Hawaii happening quite a lot, is storm surges will come up, grab half the beach and pull it away. That's not necessarily because coral have died and they've gone away. It's just storm surges are bigger and badder these days. So they're very important in terms of coastal communities. But 25% of protein and fish communities come from coral reefs. So they start off as small fish. They go off into the ocean, become big fish. We catch them, put them on our dinner plate. So you're talking about 500 million people rely on fish. They're a direct link to coral reefs. So when coral reefs die, guess what? There's no home and habitat for those small fish to be able to grow and go into the big ocean and be caught and consumed by us.
The baby fish, until they feel strong enough to go out into the ocean, they stay safe within these corals.
Yeah, if anybody's watched Finding Nemo, there's a little scene where the little fry go to the edge of the reef and they're terrified to go out into the open ocean. Well, it's a sanctuary for these smaller fish to be able to develop, grow, and then move on.
Now, is coral itself living?
The reason why coral is so special is it's an animal, but it's also a plant and it's also a rock. So you have all three. It's quite an interesting creature. The reason why they're so special is because we've lost 50% of all coral reefs on the planet right today. And the prediction is in 30 years, we're going to lose the rest. So you're taking an animal species, been around for millions of years, and you're killing it in 60 years. Done, gone, no more. So it's a very imperative thing that we really take action steps towards driving awareness and getting the public and the government officials to understand that this is a very, very vital and crucial revenue for tons and tons of people globally.
So is Canton Coral, is it just building sculptures and throwing it in next to the corals, or you have a political component too, or an educational component?
Yeah, so just by happenstance, these sculptures ask the question. When people dive on it, they come up and they go, what's that doing on the bottom of the ocean? And then the dive operators, they tell this message, right? But in addition to that, when we put these sculptures in, we put them in Fiji particularly. This is where our home base is to put these sculptures. We have to ask permission by the clansmen and the villagers because they own the reef rights. So when we ask permission, we plop these in, and now everybody becomes stakeholders because there's an added revenue stream from the resort owners to the dive operators. And we ask all those guys to upcharge to the divers just a little bit to contribute, to give money to the villagers as community projects. So they'll donate the money to us. We take that money, we might put a pump to help pump water out, or a solar system to help that community. So everybody becomes a stakeholder. Then the message becomes, hey, you see this is a valuable commodity now. Let's protect this area. So then we can go from just a sculpture to asking the locals if we would be okay to protect that area because now fish are coming back, there's more resources. Then you can go to a government and say we want a marine protected area and negotiate that deal. And those are long-term plays. These don't happen in a matter of weeks.
And when did you start diving?
So I started diving in my early 20s. I started surfing first and then just fell in love with the ocean. Growing up as a kid in England, jumping off the rocks, and then you come to California and it's like the epicenter of like surf culture. So I started surfing, and then the next progression was snorkeling and diving, and went down to Mexico and Fiji and all these different places and just fell in love with the ocean.
Let's take a step back. I hear an English accent. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Right. So you're originally from the UK. So how did you make it to the US? Tell me your immigration story.
So the immigration stories are quite a good one, actually. So,
okay.
You know, it's kind of like the typical dream, you know, let's go to America. It's the land of opportunity and all the rest of it. But getting here, as a lot of people know, is very difficult. And actually staying here is even harder. So, you know, we're talking 30 years ago when I came here, and immigration laws are completely different then. 9/11 has obviously changed everything. I mean, that just stopped the whole lot. So, you know, I came here at 19, didn't want to leave, so I didn't. I stayed here.
You had overstayed your time.
I was an illegal alien for 13 years, and it was very, very stressful. And I lived in a very depressed place in England, no money, no opportunities, no nothing. So when you come here, you do everything you possibly can to survive. And as an immigrant, you work 10 times harder to be able to survive because there's no backup.
Was it worse living here as an illegal alien for 13 years, or was it worse where you grew up in England where you had nothing?
Hands down, England was the worst.
Really?
You know?
So
I grew up as a kid burning our furniture to stay warm and stealing and just being a general not a good person because you had to do things that weren't good to survive, at least from my perspective. There's a lot of rich people in England, there's a lot of middle class. We were like at the lowest of the low. So.
And what did you do to survive? When you say you had to work, there was no social safety net. There's no social safety net for anybody who's out of status in America.
Well, so in England, I was fortunate enough to have a friend of mine say, hey, come work for this painter. And at that time, I was working for $15 a day because he was kind of taking advantage of me. But I did a 4-year apprenticeship in amongst the chaos of that lifestyle. And, you know, I'm an observer. So I observe and I watch, and then I adapt those to my own skills. And fortunately, I'm very skilled, and I recognized that at a very young age. So as soon as I moved here, I started a painting and decorating company. And when I say painting and decorating, this is not just picking up a roller and a tray and a caulking gun. You know, I was trained in French polishing, wallpapering, various different finishes, from lacquers to all different types of stuff. So I came here skilled, and then I just translated that into a career.
How did you turn that into a green card?
You know, I was traveling a lot, and, you know, going in and out of the country was terrifying back in those days because you just didn't know if you'd get back in. And even though I'd overstayed, they'd still let me back in. Again, this was pre 9/11, but after 9/11, I said to my current girlfriend, I said, look, I'm not going to be able to go back and see my family. And the longest I went was 9 years, not seeing my family because I just didn't want to leave because I might not get back in. So she said, look, let's get married. And we were boyfriend and girlfriend. So it wasn't an illegal thing. It was a legitimate marriage. We got married, and that's history.
Are you together still today?
No, we've gone our separate ways. She is a wonderful human being, and we're great friends. So,
But you're a U.S. citizen now?
I am, yes.
Okay, so congratulations. And once you became legal, you began to build your own business. What was that business?
Several businesses. So I went from painting and decorating to then into concrete, block work, brickwork, stone fireplaces, and then into building high-end recording studios in LA, then into multi-million-dollar homes all over Malibu, Beverly Hills.
Where did you get this whole idea that I have to personally save the coral reefs?
Well, look, it's like this. You've got to pick your battle when it comes to environmental issues, right? Imagine trying to organize planting 300 million pieces of coral in the ocean. Starts off with a $1,000 open one water course. Then if you want to be safe, you want to do your open water 2. You want to do advance and rescue because you're working with boats, coral reefs at depth. So it's a very complex and difficult task, and not many people are doing it.
Is this something that's been burning inside of you for a while?
Well, so, going into retirement, you end up with a lot of time on your hands, and, the oceans just permeates in my brain. And every article I read is, coral bleaching started in the 90s, and it was periodically every 10 to 15 years it would happen. Now it's 2016, 17, 18, 20. It's happening at an alarming rate. So when I went into retirement, I just translated my skills of engineering and art, because, I'm creating incredible artwork for people in their homes, essentially. I'm building really cool structures. It's a natural progression to me to go, okay, how do I save reef? How do I spread awareness? Because I could go and plant reef and no one would know about it. But if I go and put a sculpture in the ground and put coral on it, people are going to pay attention, take pictures, and share that message. So that's how that will transpire.
Do you have to do something to put the coral on the sculpture, or does it just naturally start growing?
No, you have to harvest the coral and place it. And that's the point between this is when people are restoring corals, they have little tables that are about 3 feet off the ground and they plant fragments. So the way you propagate, there's a few ways you do it, but the way you do it is you take a cutting essentially of the coral, you go put it on the table, wait for it to grow, and then put it back on the reef. So what we're doing is we're saying we're going to donate you a sculptural art piece that is acting as a nursery.
Are you focusing solely on the Fiji Islands, or are you installing coral sculptures all over the world?
So we were going to go for Hawaii, and we soon realized that the American red tape and bureaucracy is not going to allow us to do what we want to do without spending millions of dollars. You can go down to Fiji, they don't care, and it's owned by the local chiefs. So you can go and sit down with the chief and get permission from them to do whatever you want. And obviously we're doing the right thing.
What about like Australia? We hear the Great Barrier Reef is getting destroyed.
Why bother when I can do it in one of the most pristine places in the world that's having all the same problems but none of the help? Great Barrier Reef is doing a biobank, which is a $264 million facility to house these corals as a coral bank to save these species because they're going to go extinct.
How do you make sure that these sculptures, they don't get destroyed by the current storms?
There's no guarantees against the 100-year storm. So we engineer them to take just your basic current activities and storms, but obviously not the major ones. But these just fall over, you just pick them up, put them back again, and away you go. So, is
there any connection between what we're experiencing now in terms of climate change and the loss of coral in the ocean?
100%. It is a 100% factor. Meat production is pumping a massive amount of methane and other gases into the atmosphere that are 260 times more harmful than CO2. Now, our atmosphere is heating up, as we know. We call it global warming. Now, the oceans, what a lot of people don't understand, absorb that energy, and it's equivalent to 5 atomic bombs going off every second. So the ocean is absorbing that, and it heats up. And as you know, if you boil a pot of potatoes and you get it to boil, it boils over, right? So that's what's happening. We have thermal expansions. The oceans are now rising through that heat, but also corals only survive in a very small window of temperature. So when that temperature rises, they die. And that's what's happening to coral reefs.
So I talk a lot on my show about how climate change affects migration.
100%. You got to understand that most immigration laws are just going to go out the window at this point in time in the next 30 years, because you're not going to be able to stop an entire nation of people having to move because they cannot survive because the oceans have risen and there's no land for them to stay on. They are moving in the Maldives already. Those islands are going underwater. Yemen's a great example. The war in Yemen is pretty much being fought over water. And guess what? Everyone's bailing because water is not worth fighting over, so they're leaving. Guess what? That puts pressure on other communities and countries to say, oh man, we've got all these immigrants. You're going to have to wake up real quick to the environmental issues at hand. Otherwise, all these countries can talk and talk and talk about immigration as much as they want, but they are going to face the biggest crisis ever handed to them on a plate, and it's coming real soon.
I agree with you. And it all interacts with the oceans, with how people live and where they live.
Those oceans rise. We have every coastal community around the world being affected, and Miami, is being affected. Their city is flooding, and they're putting in millions and millions of dollars to have pumps put in. That's not going to stop. You're just putting a Band-Aid on a very large cut. It's like this complete madness of thinking as opposed to addressing the issue, which is we're overproducing animals, we're cutting down every freaking forest in the planet, and we're pumping CO2 and carbon into the atmosphere. Those are the issues. Don't try and fix the down chain. Fix the top part, the top drivers that are doing it. Then you don't have to worry about the down chain because they're going to take care of themselves.
Where can people find out more about Canton Coral?
You can go to cantoncoral.com, or you can go to our YouTube channels, or anywhere on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram is @CantonCoral, and you can join us there.
And Jolyon, one last question. Have you reached your American dream?
Yeah, 100%. And now that dream's turned into a slight nightmare with the politics and the various issues that are going on here. People have got to understand this nation was built on immigrants, and I'm a prime example of what people can do and can achieve. Yes, there are elements of illegal aliens coming in and turning into gang members. Guess what? That's a social issue. You need to teach people. You need to educate people. But America, unfortunately, is stripping away education. So how are you going to fight this battle of immigrants coming in, turning into gang members when you've literally stripped away their tool and their engine to be able to become successful? But 99% of the people that come to this country are trying to do well by themselves and their families. This is just a different way of doing it. And I've got my own opinions on how you can go about doing that to help immigrants come to this country freely, but pay their dues and be legal.
Well, Jolyon Collier, it's a really important thing that you're doing. Thank you again for your time.
You're welcome.